I pressed record as my husband told his lawyer, "She won't last another month anyway." I waited. At the divorce hearing, he demanded everything. I stayed silent. Then I played the recording out loud, and his face went white as the judge said something that destroyed him. "Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin." I sat perfectly still in the sunroom, the late afternoon light warm on my skin. My right hand was curled in my lap, fingers closed around the small, cold rectangle of the digital recorder. My thumb rested lightly on the single raised button. From the study, the sound of Marcus's voice, too loud and too confident, carried through the half-open door. "The numbers are all there, David, clean and simple." That was his lawyer, David Greer. A smooth, agreeable murmur followed Marcus's pronouncement. I did not move. A bee bumped against the window pane near my shoulder, a persistent, droning sound. I watched it struggle. "I want this wrapped up before the end of the quarter," Marcus said. His tone was the one he used for finalizing a business deal. Brisk, impersonal. "The liquidity event from the Meridian merger will hit my account in 60 days. I don't want any complications." "Understood." Greer's voice was closer now, as if they had moved toward the hallway. "We'll file the petition on Monday. With the medical documentation we've compiled regarding her fragile state, the request for full control of the joint assets and the house is strong. The spousal support ask is a strategic pressure point. The judge will see the necessity of protecting her from her own inability to manage." I felt my breath stop in my chest. The air in the sunroom grew thick. I had known, of course. For months I had known the shape of what was coming. The late-night calls he took outside, the new passwords on his devices, the way he had stopped looking at me when he spoke. But knowing and hearing are different things. Hearing is concrete. Marcus laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound. "Just draw it up. She won't last another month anyway." The words were not shouted. They were delivered with casual, conversational certainty, a statement of fact. The bee ceased its buzzing and fell to the windowsill, wings still. My thumb moved. It pressed down. A soft, almost inaudible click signaled the end of the recording. The tiny red light on the device winked out. I did not cry. I had done all my crying in private, over many years, in the quiet corners of this house. A single tear did track a slow, hot path down my cheek, but it felt detached, like rainwater on glass. I watched it fall onto the fabric of my linen trousers, leaving a perfect, dark circle. I observed the phenomenon with academic interest. This was the physical manifestation of a pain so old it had calcified. It was data. I stood up. My joints did not protest. I placed the recorder carefully on the wrought iron table beside my chair. Outside, the garden I had tended for 15 years was a riot of late summer color. The hydrangeas were heavy blue globes. The roses I had nursed back from aphids last spring climbed defiantly over the trellis. It was a kingdom of growth and patience, my only real accomplishment he had never thought to value. I walked to the doorway of the study. It was empty now, smelling of his cologne and the faint, acrid scent of the expensive printer paper he preferred. His leather chair was pushed back at an arrogant angle. On the vast, empty desk sat a single, forgotten Mont Blanc pen. I picked it up. It was heavy, cold, a gift from me for our 20th anniversary. He had thanked me with a distracted kiss on the forehead and had used it ever since to sign documents that slowly erased me from his life. I returned to the sunroom. I picked up the recorder again. I pressed play, holding it to my ear. His voice emerged, crisp and digital, in the quiet room. "Just draw it up. She won't last another month anyway." I listened to it 3 times. The first time, I felt the slash of the words. The second time, I analyzed the tone, the utter lack of malice, which was worse. It was simply his assessment, as one might assess a failing business unit. The third time, I listened for the space after the sentence, the silence my presence had occupied for so long. I turned it off. I knew then what I would do. The grief, the shock, the wounded animal panic, those were luxuries for people with time. I had a month. According to Marcus Richardson, I would not last another month. He was correct in a way. The woman who had listened silently from the sunroom would not last. She would not survive. But something else would. I went to the antique secretary desk in the corner of the living room, a piece my grandmother had left me. From a small locked compartment, I retrieved a business card. The paper was thick, matte. It read, Angela Sharp, Eskener Family Law and Civil Litigation, a colleague from my old life, before the marriage, before the long retreat into this house. We had not spoken in a decade, but her card had stayed in that drawer, a fossil from a self I had put away. I had kept it for no reason I could articulate, until now. I took my personal cell phone, a simple model he mocked but never monitored because he considered it beneath notice. I entered the number. My fingers were steady. The phone rang twice. Angela Sharp. The voice was exactly as I remembered. Clear, direct, no nonsense. Angela, I said. My own voice sounded strange to me, unused but firm. This is Evelyn Richardson. We knew each other a long time ago. I require your professional services. There was a pause. I could picture her in some book-lined office, shifting gears from one case to the next, pulling the file of her memory. Eve, she said. The recognition was there, and something else, a hint of sorrow, perhaps, at the circumstances that would prompt such a call after so many years. Tell me what you need. I need to schedule a consultation, as soon as possible, today if you can. Another pause, shorter this time, the sound of pages turning. I have a cancellation at 5:30. Can you be here by then? I can. She gave me the address. I wrote it down with his Mont Blanc pen on a scrap of gardening notepaper. I did not say thank you. This was not a social call. Eve, she said, just before ending the call, bring everything. Every document, every communication that feels relevant, even the things you think aren't important. I have one piece of evidence already, I said. It is an audio recording. The silence on the line was profound, then a slow, deliberate exhale. I see. I'll see you at 5:30. I put the phone down. I looked at the recorder. I looked at the garden. The sun had moved and the shadows from the oak tree were long across the lawn. The bee on the windowsill was gone. I went upstairs to our bedroom, to the bedroom. I opened my closet. I chose a dress of navy blue wool, simple and severe. I laid it on the bed. I selected low-heeled pumps and a single strand of pearls that had been my mother's. I would present myself as what I was, a woman of substance, not a fading patient. As I changed, I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror. A black woman in her late 40s, medium dark skin, eyes that looked older than they should. I saw the intelligence there, and the fatigue, and the deep, slow-burning fire that had finally found its fuel. I saw the woman Marcus saw. Quiet, decorative, breakable. He was wrong. I was not fragile. I was dormant. And dormancy is not death. It is a strategy. It is the gathering of resources beneath a silent surface, waiting for the correct season to emerge. I picked up my purse. I placed the recorder inside. I placed Angela Sharp's card beside it. I descended the stairs, my footsteps steady on the hardwood. I did not look back at the sunroom, at the study, at the ghost of my former life. I walked out the front door, locked it behind me, and got into my car. The engine started with a subdued purr. I checked the address on the notepaper. I pulled out of the driveway. The war had not yet begun in any court's ledger. But in that moment, driving toward the city as the afternoon light began to soften, I declared it, silently and with absolute clarity. He believed I would not last another month. He would learn how long a patient woman can endure, and what she can do when she decides to stop. The office building was older than I expected, a 6-story brick structure sandwiched between glass towers. The elevator smelled of lemon cleaning solution and old paper. I got out on the 5th floor. The door to Suite 510 was frosted glass with Sharp and Associates stenciled in simple black lettering. I pushed it open. The reception area was small, warm, and quiet. A young man with glasses looked up from a computer. "Evelyn Richardson for Angela Sharp," I said. "Of course, she's expecting you. Go right in." He gestured to a solid oak door. Angela's office was a reflection of the woman I remembered, amplified by time. Bookshelves covered 2 walls, filled with legal volumes, biographies, and a few well-tended spider plants. A large window looked out onto a narrow alley and the fire escape of the adjacent building. The desk was orderly, but stacks of case files created a topography of urgent paper. She stood as I entered. "Eve." She came around the desk. She was taller than me, her hair in neat silver twists. She wore a tailored burgundy suit. She did not offer a hug, but took both my hands in hers for a brief, firm clasp. Her eyes scanned my face, quick and assessing. "Sit. Can I get you tea? Coffee?" "Tea, please." My voice was steady. She moved to a small side table where an electric kettle and a ceramic pot sat. "Earl Grey, all right?" "Perfect." The ritual was deliberate. It gave us both a moment. I placed my purse on the floor beside the chair. She brought over 2 mugs, steam rising in gentle curls, and set them on the desk before taking her seat. She laced her fingers together and looked at me. "Tell me," she said. I opened my purse. I took out the digital recorder. I placed it on the desk between us. "My husband, Marcus Richardson, is filing for divorce. He was meeting with his lawyer, David Greer, in our home this afternoon. I recorded a portion of their conversation." Her expression did not change. She gave a single, slow nod. "Play it." I pressed play. We listened in silence to Marcus's voice filling the book-lined room. I watched Angela's face. Her eyes remained fixed on the recorder, her lips pressed into a thin line. When his final sentence, "She won't last another month anyway," hung in the air, I stopped it. Angela did not speak for a full minute. She picked up her tea, took a sip, and set it down precisely on its coaster. "Medical documentation?" she asked, her tone flat. "That is what his lawyer said regarding my fragile state." "I have no diagnosed medical condition. I have been quiet, withdrawn. It has been a long marriage." "I understand what that means," she said. There was no pity in her voice, only a hard recognition. "What are his demands, as you heard them?" "The house, all joint assets, spousal support from me to him. Control, essentially. He mentioned a liquidity event from a business merger in 60 days. He wants it resolved before then." Angela picked up a legal pad and began writing in quick, sharp strokes. "David Greer is a shark, a very expensive, very effective shark. He operates on intimidation and procedural overwhelm. He expects you to be exactly what Marcus described, a woman who will not last." She looked up at me. "But you recorded this. You called me. So you have decided to last. What is it you want, Eve?" I had asked myself this during the drive. The answer was clear. I want the house. It is my home. I have maintained it for 15 years. I want a fair division of the assets he has not hidden, and I want him to hear his own words in a place where they matter. A faint, grim smile touched her lips. "The latter is a feeling. The former are legal objectives. We can work with both." She leaned forward. "This recording is powerful, but it is not a magic wand. Greer will argue it was obtained improperly, though in your own home the expectation of privacy is complicated. Its real power is not as a smoking gun for asset division. Its power is in showing the judge Marcus Richardson's character, his contempt, his bad faith." She paused, letting that settle. "He believes you are broken. He expects you to either collapse or fight back emotionally, to make scenes, to send angry texts, to beg. That is the narrative they are building. You are too unstable to manage your own affairs, thus he must take control, for your own good. So what do? You give them exactly what they expect, Angela said, her eyes locked on mine. But you do it on purpose. You become the perfect, silent, compliant Mark. You sign whatever they put in front of you. I felt a jolt of confusion. Sign it? Without objection. You agree to everything. You are the picture of a defeated woman. You offer no resistance. You communicate only through me, and I will be courteously, frustratingly non-committal. We let them believe their plan is proceeding perfectly. Why? Because arrogance is blind, she said. They will get greedy. They will get careless. They will stop hiding their tactics because they believe you are not watching. Marcus will commit to his story. The long-suffering husband, the fragile wife. He will say things under oath. And then, she tapped the recorder with her pen, we use this, not to prove a hidden bank account, but to prove he is a liar, to show the judge the man behind the petition. In family court, character is evidence. Bad faith can alter everything. The strategy was cold. It required a level of self-control I had been practicing for years, but now it would be weaponized. A silent siege, I said. Angela nodded, approving of the term. Exactly. You starve their narrative of any conflict. You let them advance unchecked until they are overextended. Then we cut the line. She made a swift, slicing motion with her hand. But it requires discipline, Eve. Total discipline. You cannot react to him. You cannot respond to provocation. You go about your life as if you have accepted your fate. Can you do that? I thought of the sunroom, of the single tear, of the bee, of the years of swallowed words. I have had a great deal of practice at silence, I said. Good. She made more notes. I will need a retainer. We will need to gather every financial record you can access. Statements, tax returns, anything. I have a forensic accountant I trust. We will find what Marcus is trying to shield. You will continue to live in the house. Do not alter your routine. Garden. Read. Be seen as the quiet wife. When the papers are served, you bring them to me. I will review them, and you will sign them. Do you understand? I understand. She put down her pen. This will be unpleasant. He may try to gloat. He may try to bait you. Every instinct will tell you to fight back. You must remember, the victory is not in winning an argument in the kitchen. It is in the final ruling of the court. We are playing for the judge, not for him. I can do it. She studied me again, and this time I saw the professional assessment soften, just for a moment, into something like respect. I believe you can. She slid a contract across the desk. This outlines my representation. My fee structure is on page 2. It is not insignificant, but given the assets involved, it is manageable. Read it. Take it home if you wish, but we need to move quickly. I did not take it home. I read it there in the quiet of her office, with the steam from my tea warming my face. The numbers were clear. I signed at the bottom with the same Mont Blanc pen I had taken from his desk. When I stood to leave, Angela walked me to the door. Go home, Eve. Act normal. The next move is theirs. When they make it, you call me immediately. No direct contact with Marcus or Greer. Everything flows through this office now. I picked up my purse. The recorder felt heavier inside it, no longer just a secret, but a piece of artillery in a war he did not yet know was declared. Angela, I said, my hand on the doorknob. Thank you. She shook her head. Don't thank me. This is a business arrangement, but I will tell you this. I very much look forward to watching David Greer's face when he hears that recording. The grim smile returned. Now go. Be silent. Be still. Let them think they've won. I walked back to the elevator, down to the street, into the cooling evening air. The city sounds were a distant roar. I drove back to the suburbs, to the house, to the life I was now performing as a role. I entered through the front door. Marcus's car was not in the driveway. The house was dark and still. I went to the sunroom. I sat in the same chair. The night had erased the garden, turning it into a shapeless, dark mass beyond the glass. I looked at my reflection in the black pane. I saw a woman who had hired a lawyer, a woman with a plan, a woman who was, for the first time in a very long time, truly awake. The silent siege had begun. The papers arrived 3 days later. A uniformed courier from a legal service rang the doorbell just after 10 in the morning. I was in the garden, weeding the flower beds near the front walk. I saw him approach, a thin man with a clipboard, and I knew. "Evelyn Richardson?" he asked. "I am." He extended a thick, sealed envelope. "Please sign here, acknowledging receipt." I wiped my hands on my trousers, leaving small streaks of soil. I signed on the electronic screen he offered. The transaction was silent and efficient. He handed me the envelope, turned, and walked back to his idling sedan. I stood on the porch, the weight of the packet in my hand. The sun was warm on my shoulders. A robin hopped across the lawn, searching for worms. I went inside. I did not open the envelope immediately. I washed my hands at the kitchen sink, the water running clear over the dirt. I made a cup of tea. Then I sat at the large, polished oak table where Marcus and I used to have Sunday breakfast years ago. I slit the envelope with a paring knife. The document was dense with legal language. I read it slowly. The petition for dissolution of marriage. The first pages were standard: our names, the date of marriage, the jurisdictional facts. Then I reached the prayer for relief, the list of demands. Marcus, through his attorney, requested 1. Sole title and possession of the marital residence located at our address. 2. 100% of all investment and retirement accounts held in both our names, citing my lack of financial acumen and emotional volatility as necessitating his sole management. 3. Spousal maintenance from me to him in an amount to be determined based on his temporary need for support as he transitions to single life and his historical role as the primary financial manager. 4. That I be restrained from accessing any safe deposit boxes or financial accounts beyond a basic checking account he proposed to fund with a modest allowance. 5. That I pay his attorney's fees. I read it twice. The audacity was not a surprise. I had heard the intent, but seeing it in black and white in official court-filed paper was different. The language was cold and clinical, but the message was the one from the recording. She won't last another month anyway. This was the legal blueprint for my erasure. My hand did not shake. I took a sip of tea. I then picked up my phone and called Angela. "They're here," I said when she answered. "Read me the key demands," she said. I could hear the rustle of paper on her end. I read them to her, my voice flat. When I finished, there was a brief silence. "Even for Greer, that's aggressively contemptuous," she said. I heard the scratch of her pen. "Good. It shows the judge their hand early. It's overreach. Now you will do exactly as we discussed. Do you have a pen?" "I do." "Write this on a sticky note. Attach it to the first page. Do not write on the document itself. Write, 'Reviewed with counsel. No objection to form or service. Awaiting further instruction.' Sign and date the note, then scan the entire packet and email it to me. Use the secure link I texted you. Put the original in the folder I gave you." I did as she said. The note was small and yellow. My signature looked calm. I used the scanner on the printer in Marcus's study, the machine whirring as it digested the pages that sought to dismantle my life. I sent the email. "Now, Eve, listen carefully." Angela's voice was crisp in my ear. "He will expect a reaction. He may come to the house. He may call. You will be the woman who received these papers and is too overwhelmed or too defeated to fight. You will say nothing about the terms. If he speaks to you, you will be polite and vague. Your only line is, 'I have received The papers. My lawyer will be in touch. Can you do that? I can. Your job is to be a blank wall. Let his arrogance bounce off and echo back to him. His interpretation of your silence is not your concern. Our concern is the judge's interpretation later. I hung up. I finished my tea. I returned to the garden. I spent the next 2 hours pruning the rose bushes, cutting away dead wood to make room for new growth. The physical work steadied me. The thorns pricked my gloves. Marcus came home early that evening. I heard his car in the driveway, the familiar sound of the garage door opening and closing. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a soup I did not intend to eat. He walked in, still in his suit jacket, his tie loosened. He placed his briefcase on the counter with a deliberate thud. He looked at me. I continued chopping a carrot. The knife made a solid, rhythmic sound on the wooden board. "You got the papers," he said. It wasn't a question. I did. I did not look up. "I assume you've had a chance to look them over." His tone was careful, probing. He was waiting for the tears, the questions, the pleading. I have. I swept the carrot pieces into a bowl. He shifted his weight. My calm was clearly not what he had scripted. "David assures me the terms are standard given the circumstances. It's for the best, Evelyn. A clean break. You'll be provided for." I picked up a stalk of celery. "My lawyer will be in touch." My voice was neutral, like a receptionist confirming an appointment. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "You've hired someone?" He tried to sound dismissive. "That's your right, of course, but it will just drag things out, increase costs. For both of us." I said nothing. I began chopping the celery. "Evelyn, be reasonable. You're not equipped for a long legal battle. The stress alone." He let the sentence hang, a repeat of his lawyer's medical implication. I stopped chopping. I looked at him then, directly. I held his gaze for 3 seconds. I saw the man I had loved, now a stranger performing concern. I saw the certainty that he had already won. I gave a small, non-committal nod, as if acknowledging a point about the weather, and returned to my task. He stared at me for another moment, then exhaled sharply through his nose. "Fine. Have it your way." He picked up his briefcase and walked out of the kitchen. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, retreating to his study. The next afternoon, Angela called. "Greer's office has contacted me. They want to schedule a preliminary hearing in 3 weeks to address temporary orders. They are pushing hard. I have agreed. This is part of the process. I will need you to come in tomorrow to sign the formal response." "Which is?" I asked. "Our response will be a simple general denial of the allegations in his petition. We will not counterfile with our own demands. Not yet. We let theirs stand, unchallenged on the record. We continue the performance." I went to her office the following day. The document she placed in front of me was only a few pages long. It stated that I denied the characterization of my emotional state and financial incompetence. It did not argue about the house or the assets. It was a placeholder, a procedural step that signaled a defense without revealing its shape. I signed it. The pen felt familiar in my hand. "You're doing well, Eve," Angela said as she witnessed my signature. "He is confused by your silence. Confusion leads to mistakes. We are right on schedule." I drove home. That night, Marcus was working late. I ate my soup alone at the large table. Afterward, I took the original divorce petition from the folder. I spread it out on the polished wood. I read his demands one more time, each a brick in the wall he was building between himself and consequence. Then I took the signed copy of our bland response and placed it on top of his petition. I put them both back in the folder. I closed it. The trap was now baited. The paper war had begun, and my first move had been to lay down my arms in full view of the enemy. He saw surrender. I saw the first phase of a strategy. The silence was no longer just a habit, it was a weapon, and I was learning how to hold it. The next phase was not about waiting, it was about digging. Angela called it building the foundation. For her, that meant financial forensics. For me, it meant memory. I brought 4 large cardboard boxes of documents to her office: bank statements, tax returns from the last 10 years, brokerage reports, property records. I had gathered them from the filing cabinet in the study, from the safe, from drawers where Marcus had stuffed forgotten envelopes. The process was methodical. I did not hurry. If Marcus noticed the emptied files, he said nothing. My performance of defeated silence continued, and he seemed to believe it extended to a lack of curiosity about our own finances. In Angela's office, we spread the documents across a large conference table. A man named Leo joined us. He was Angela's forensic accountant, a man in his 60s with a calm demeanor and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He spoke little, his fingers tracing columns of numbers with silent intensity. As Leo worked, Angela asked me questions. When did he open his solo practice? Do you recall him mentioning a private investment group called Marlowe Holdings? Did you ever sign a power of attorney you didn't fully review? The questions were keys, and they unlocked rooms in my mind I had closed off. 6 years ago, I thought, as I confirmed the date of his practice's incorporation. We were at a restaurant celebrating. He'd ordered champagne. "This means real Independence Eve," he had said, squeezing my hand. "No more partners to answer to." I had smiled, asked about his plans. He had patted my hand and said, "Don't worry your pretty head about the details. Just enjoy the fruits." I had let my hand go, still under his. I had stopped asking after that. Leo slid a spreadsheet toward Angela. He pointed to a series of transfers over the past 18 months, regular, substantial sums moving from Marcus's business account to an entity listed as Marlowe Holdings, LLC. The statement showed the money leaving, but no corresponding statements for Marlowe existed in our files. "Marital funds diverted to a private entity he controls," Leo said, his voice dry, "likely to depreciate the visible marital estate. A common tactic." Angela made a note. "We'll subpoena the records for Marlowe. If he's hiding liquidity there, especially with this merger payout coming, the judge will not be pleased." The dry detail of the crime, the diversion of marital funds, was clear. But the crime was older than that. It was in the pattern. 3 years ago. We were at a charity gala. I had spent weeks helping to organize the silent auction. A major donor, a woman who had built a tech company from scratch, was discussing market volatility with Marcus. I had listened, then offered a comment about historical correction cycles I had read about. Marcus had laughed, a warm, charming sound for the crowd. "My wife, the amateur economist," he said, pulling me close in a side hug that felt like a restraint. "Isn't she adorable?" The donor had given me a tight, pitying smile and turned back to Marcus. I had stood there, smiling, my face hot. I had not offered an opinion in mixed company again. "Look here," Leo said later, pointing to a life insurance policy. The beneficiary had been changed 2 years prior from me to a trust. The trust documents were not in the box. "Did you discuss this change?" Angela asked. "No," I said. The word was simple. It encompassed 1,000 undiscussed things. 1 year ago. I had suggested cautiously that I might take a course in landscape design. A small business idea. He had been reading the financial news on his tablet. He didn't look up. What for? The garden looks fine, and running a business is a headache you don't need. You have everything you need here. He had said it so reasonably, as if protecting me from stress. I had looked at my hands in my lap. I had said nothing. The evidence Leo compiled was a map of a second, hidden financial life. But the real evidence, the kind no subpoena could capture, was piling up beside me in the quiet room. It was the memory of dismissed suggestions, of conversations ended with a patronizing smile, of my own voice growing quieter each year until it was a ghost in my throat. Angela reviewed Leo's summary. "This is good. This is very good. The hidden assets demonstrate fraudulent intent. It proves he is not acting in good faith. Combined with the recording, it paints a picture of a man who sees his spouse not as a partner, but as an obstacle to be cleared. She looked at me. The law can divide assets. It can award houses. But for a judge to truly understand, he needs to see the person, the character. Your memories, Eve, they are the context. The financial records are the what. Your experience is the why. I did not tell her all the memories. Some were too small, too sharp. The way he would correct my pronunciation of a wine in front of guests. The time he bought me a luxury car for my birthday after I had said I wanted to volunteer at the botanical garden, as if a thing could replace a purpose. The slow, steady relocation of my sense of self from the center of my own life to its periphery. I simply nodded. "We have 3 weeks until the hearing," Angela said. "Leo will formalize his report. I will draft the motion to compel production of the Marlowe Holdings records. You will continue as you are. Live your life. Tend your garden. Be the quiet wife. Let him feel secure." I drove home with the empty boxes. The house was dark. Marcus was traveling for business. I put the boxes back in the storage closet. I walked through the quiet rooms. I went to the sunroom. The garden was a silhouette under a sliver of moon. I did not feel angry in that moment. I felt a cold, clear certainty. The stones were gathered. The foundation Angela spoke of was not just made of paper and numbers. It was made of 20 years of patience, of observation, of silent witness. It was solid, and it could bear the weight of the truth I intended to place upon it. The past was no longer a country of regret. It had become an archive, and I was finally, calmly, pulling the files. The hearing was 1 week away. The silence in the house had become a practiced thing, a layer of insulation between me and the world Marcus occupied. I tended the garden. I read books from the library. I prepared simple meals. I was a woman waiting, and to any outside observer, waiting passively. Angela summoned me to her office after hours. The building was quiet, the reception desk dark. Her office light was a warm pool in the gloom of the corridor. I let myself in. She was at the conference table, not at her desk. The table was clear except for 2 files and a legal pad. A takeout salad sat untouched next to her. "Sit, Eve," she said, not looking up from a document she was annotating. "We have final details to review." I took my usual seat. She finished her note, capped her pen, and looked at me. Her expression was focused, clinical. "First courtroom demeanor," she began. "You will sit beside me. You will not speak unless I direct you to or the judge addresses you directly. You will keep your hands folded in your lap. You will make eye contact with the judge when he speaks. You will not look at Marcus. Do you understand?" "I understand." "If you need to communicate with me, you will write a note on this pad." She slid a small yellow notepad and a pen toward me. "Do not whisper. The microphone at our table is sensitive. The court reporter records everything. Your silence is part of our presentation." I nodded. "Greer will present Marcus's narrative. He will call Marcus to the stand. Marcus will portray himself as the responsible, burdened party. He will likely embellish. He will talk about your fragility, your inability to handle stress, your need for his management. He will sound reasonable. He will sound concerned." I felt my jaw tighten slightly. I forced it to relax. "Your job," Angela continued, "is to listen to this without reaction. No shaking your head, no tears, no angry looks. You are a blank slate. You are listening to a performance that has no connection to reality. Can you do that?" "I have had a great deal of practice listening to performances," I said. A flicker of acknowledgement crossed her face. "Good. Now our strategy. We will not present our full case at this hearing. This is for temporary orders, who stays in the house, who has access to funds before the full trial. Greer will push for everything he asked for in the petition. We will argue for the status quo. You remain in the house. Both parties maintain access to marital accounts. We will present Leo's preliminary findings about the hidden assets to show Marcus's bad faith, but we will not play the recording." "Why not?" I asked. The recorder was a physical weight in my purse, even now. "Because its power is greatest as a surprise," she said, "and because this hearing is just a skirmish. The judge today will likely split the difference, grant some temporary support, maybe order the house sold but not give Marcus everything. That's not our goal. Our goal is to let Marcus commit, under oath, to his story. If we play the recording now, he and Greer get warning. They get a chance to spin it to explain it away. We want his testimony at the final trial to be locked in. We want him to swear to his lies before he knows we have the truth." It made strategic sense. It was cold. It required more patience. "So I listen," I said. "I say nothing. We reveal nothing." "Correct. You are the calm in the center of his storm. The judge will be watching both of you. I want him to see a composed, rational woman and a husband who is perhaps protesting too much. The contrast will be noted." She opened one of the files. It contained a diagram of the courtroom. "This is where we will sit. This is the witness stand. This is the judge's bench. You will stand when the judge enters and leaves. You will call him Your Honor." We went through the procedures. How to approach the witness stand if called. How to answer questions clearly and concisely. If Greer questions you, which he might to try to fluster you, you answer only the question asked. Do not volunteer information. If you don't understand, say so. If you need a moment, look at me. I will object if necessary. For an hour we drilled. She asked me mock questions in a flat, hostile tone. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Richardson, that you have a history of anxiety that prevents you from managing financial matters?" I answered, "No, that is not true." My voice was even, factual. After the drill, she sat back. "You're ready, technically." She studied me. "The harder part is the emotional discipline. He will say things that are hurtful. He will misrepresent your entire marriage. You must let those words pass through you. They are not for you. They are for the judge, and the judge will hear them differently once we provide the key to decode them." She tapped the file folder. "That key is your recording. Its power is not just in the words, 'She won't last another month.' Its power is in the tone, the casual cruelty, the absolute certainty. It transforms every concerned statement he makes on the stand from compassion to condescension. From protection to predation. The judge will hear it. I promise you." I believed her. The cold certainty I had felt while gathering the stones of memory solidified into a different form. Readiness. "What do I do the day before?" I asked. "You live your life. Garden. Read. Pack a bag with a change of clothes, your ID, this notepad, a bottle of water. Dress as you did for our first meeting. Professional, serious, no flash. You are not trying to impress. You are presenting facts. Your person is a fact." I stood to leave. The city lights glittered outside her window. "Eve," Angela said. Her voice was softer now. "This is the calm before. It is always the strangest time. The work is done. The move is planned. All that's left is to walk into the room and execute. Trust the work. Trust the strategy, and trust that I will not let him get away with this." "I do trust it," I said, and I did. For the first time in years, I trusted a process completely. I drove home through the quiet streets. The house was empty. Marcus was staying at a hotel downtown now, a temporary separation that suited his narrative. I did not miss his presence. The silence was now my own, not imposed. I went to my bedroom. My room. I laid out the suit I would wear, a charcoal gray jacket and trousers, a pale blue shell. I polished my low-heeled shoes. I placed my grandmother's pearls on the dresser. Then I did as Angela advised. I went into the garden with a flashlight. The night air was cool. I checked the ties on the climbing roses. I pulled a few weeds from the edge of the path. The simple physical acts grounded me. This was not hope. Hope was a fragile thing. This was something harder and more reliable. Preparation. The trap was set. The actors knew their parts. Soon the curtain would rise on a stage called a courtroom. My role was to be silent, to observe, and to wait for my one decisive line. It was a role I was finally ready to play. The courthouse was a block of gray stone, steps worn smooth by decades of urgent feet. I met Angela at a small coffee shop across the street. She was already there, sipping black coffee from a paper cup, reviewing notes in a leather folio. She looked up as I approached. "No tea today," she said. "Caffeine for focus." "You?" "Nothing." My stomach was a tight knot. I knew I could not swallow anything. "Good, let's go." We crossed the street and joined the stream of people flowing through the metal detectors. The inside was a maze of marble corridors and echoing voices. We found courtroom 4C. The door was heavy, made of dark wood with a small wired glass window. Angela pushed it open. The room was smaller than I had imagined and quieter. The air was cool, smelling of old wood, floor polish, and a faint dry dust. The judge's bench dominated the front, a massive fortress of dark paneling. The witness stand was to the left, a simple wooden chair beside a smaller desk for the court reporter. 2 tables faced the bench. Angela guided me to the one on the left. "Sit here," she said, placing her folio on the table. I took the chair beside her, my back straight, my purse on the floor between my feet. I placed the small yellow notepad and pen on the table, as instructed. I observed. The American and state flags stood in brass holders behind the bench. The clock on the wall ticked with a loud, deliberate sound. A few people sat in the public gallery behind us, lawyers waiting for their cases, a bored-looking clerk, an elderly man reading a newspaper. The atmosphere was one of mundane bureaucracy, not high drama. This, I realized, was where lives were dismantled as a matter of procedure. The door at the front of the courtroom opened. A bailiff in a uniform stepped out. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harold Wright," he intoned. We stood. The judge entered through the same door. He was an older black man with close-cropped gray hair and a face that looked carved from seasoned wood. He moved with a slow, considered pace, arranging his robes as he sat. He did not look at anyone in particular. "Be seated," he said, his voice a low rumble. The sound of chairs scraping filled the room. "Call the first case," Judge Wright said, putting on a pair of reading glasses. The bailiff read a docket number, "Richardson versus Richardson for temporary orders." "Appearances," the judge said, looking down at a file. David Greer stood up from the other table. I had not seen him enter. He was exactly as I had pictured, mid-50s, expensively tailored suit, a head of silver hair styled with precision. "David Greer for petitioner Marcus Richardson, Your Honor." "Angela Sharp for respondent Evelyn Richardson," Angela said, her voice clear and firm without being loud. The judge nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Greer." Greer stood and approached a small podium positioned between the 2 tables. He placed a single note card on it. He did not look at me. "Your Honor, this is a sad but straightforward matter. My client, Marcus Richardson, has been the sole financial provider and de facto caretaker in this marriage for many years. Mrs. Richardson, while a devoted homemaker, has unfortunately struggled with significant anxiety and decision-making paralysis. This has required my client to manage all household and financial affairs." His words were smooth, practiced. He painted a picture of a weary saint. The breakdown of the marriage has exacerbated Mrs. Richardson's fragile state. My client is deeply concerned for her welfare. He seeks temporary orders granting him exclusive use of the marital home, as it is the asset he is most familiar with managing, and sole access to the marital accounts to ensure bills are paid and finances are not neglected due to her distress. He also seeks a temporary order for spousal support, as his own resources have been depleted by years of shouldering the entire burden. Each sentence was a careful brushstroke, creating a portrait of me as a child woman, a delicate burden. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I watched the judge. Judge Wright was writing notes, his expression impassive. "Ultimately, Your Honor," Greer concluded, his tone shifting to one of grave concern, "my client seeks these orders not out of greed, but out of necessity. He wishes to protect his wife from the very stress that could cause her further harm during this difficult transition. He is, in every sense, acting as a caregiver, even now." He returned to his seat. Marcus sat beside him, his posture perfect. He wore a somber, responsible expression. He nodded slightly as Greer sat, a tiny gesture of approval. He did not glance in my direction. Judge Wright looked up. "Miss Sharp?" Angela stood. She did not go to the podium. She remained at our table, her hands resting lightly on the back of her chair. "Your Honor, we oppose the petitioner's requests in their entirety. The respondent, Evelyn Richardson, is a competent adult. She has managed the marital home for 15 years. She has no diagnosed medical condition that impairs her judgment. The petitioner's claims of her fragile state are baseless and, we will show, part of a pattern of misrepresentation." Her voice was calm, factual. "We ask that the court maintain the status quo. Mrs. Richardson remains in the home. Both parties retain access to marital funds for reasonable expenses. Any allegation of financial incompetence is contradicted by the petitioner's own actions in systematically diverting marital assets to a private holding company, a matter we have begun to uncover and will fully illuminate at trial. This is not about care. This is about control and concealment." Judge Wright's pen stopped. He looked over his glasses at Angela, then at Marcus. "Diversion of assets, Ms. Sharp." "Preliminary forensic analysis indicates regular transfers from joint accounts to an entity called Marlowe Holdings, LLC, which is controlled solely by the petitioner. We have filed a motion to compel production of its records." Greer was on his feet. "Your Honor, that is a wild allegation. Marlowe Holdings is a legitimate investment vehicle." "We'll address discovery disputes in chambers," Judge Wright interrupted, his voice firm. "For today, I'm hearing arguments on temporary arrangements." He looked back at Angela. "Continue." "Our position is simple, Your Honor," Angela said. "The petitioner's narrative is a fiction designed to justify a grab for assets. The respondent is stable, capable, and entitled to remain in her home and have access to marital resources, while this court determines the truth." She sat down. The judge made more notes. The clock ticked. He looked at Marcus. "Mr. Richardson, you are asking for a great deal on a temporary basis. You want your wife to vacate her home and turn over all financial control based on your assertion of her fragility. What evidence today can you offer of this immediate need?" Marcus stood. He buttoned his suit jacket. He looked every inch the respectable professional. "Your Honor, with all due respect to my wife, living with her these past few years has been like walking on eggshells. She cannot make the simplest decision about a home repair. She becomes overwhelmed by mail. I have had to intercept bills to prevent late payments. I love her, but I cannot stand by and watch her drown in responsibilities she is not equipped to handle. I am only trying to keep her safe." His voice was thick with fabricated emotion. It was a masterful performance. I kept my eyes on the judge. Judge Wright listened, his face still neutral. "I see," the judge said after a moment. He shuffled some papers. "I am not making final determinations today. This is a temporary hearing. I am inclined to split the baby, as it were. Mr. Richardson, you will not displace your wife from the home. She may remain. Mrs. Richardson, you will have access to one of the joint checking accounts for living expenses. Mr. Richardson will have access to the others. I am ordering the house appraised and will consider a sale at the final hearing. I am denying the request for temporary spousal support from either party pending full financial disclosure." He looked at both lawyers. I am, however, concerned by the allegation of hidden assets. Ms. Sharp, you will provide your forensic report to Mr. Greer. Mr. Greer, you will provide full documentation for this Marlowe Holdings to Ms. Sharp within 14 days. We will reconvene for a status conference on that matter. This is not a game. Full transparency is required. He banged his gavel. Next case. It was over. The bailiff called another name. Angela began quietly placing her papers into her folio. Across the room, Marcus leaned close to Greer, whispering intently. A muscle in his jaw was flexing. He was not getting the clean, swift victory he wanted. I stood. My legs were steady. I followed Angela out of the courtroom, back into the echoing hallway. She waited until we were away from the door. He took the bait, she said quietly, without looking at me. Marcus committed to the narrative, under the judge's observation. The judge is now aware of the asset issue. He is skeptical. This was a perfect first day. I nodded. The performance was underway. I had played my silent part. He had played his magnanimous tyrant. The stage was set for the next act. We walked out of the courthouse into the bland morning light. The siege continued. The final hearing was set for 6 weeks after the status conference. In that time, the machinery of discovery ground forward. Marcus, under court order, produced the records for Marlowe Holdings. Leo, the forensic accountant, spent 2 days analyzing them in Angela's office. His final report was a dry, devastating catalog. Over $400,000 in marital funds moved with the intent to obscure. The merger payout Marcus had mentioned was scheduled to deposit into that very account in 9 days. He was going to hide it completely, Angela said, pointing to the transaction ledger. The judge will not ignore this. The day of the final hearing arrived with a cold, steady rain. The courthouse felt even more austere, the marble floors slick with tracked-in water. This time, the public gallery held a few more observers, a law student, a court watcher, a reporter from the business section who had caught wind of Marcus's professional standing. Their presence added a new layer of exposure. We took our seats. Judge Wright entered, his demeanor even more reserved than before. He acknowledged both lawyers with a curt nod. "This is the final hearing on all pending matters," he stated. "Mr. Greer, you may proceed with your case in chief." Greer stood. He called Marcus to the stand. Marcus walked with a measured stride. He took the oath, his hand on the Bible, his voice firm. He sat in the witness chair, adjusted his cufflinks, and looked at his lawyer with an expression of sober readiness. Greer began with soft, establishing questions. Marcus spoke of our early marriage, his career growth, my dedication to our home. It was a sanitized history, a highlight reel with all the tension edited out. Then Greer guided him to the difficult years. "Can you describe your wife's demeanor, say, over the past 3 to 5 years?" Greer asked. Marcus sighed, a weighty, burdened sound. Evelyn became increasingly withdrawn. She seemed overwhelmed by daily life. Simple tasks, planning a menu, paying a utility bill, would cause her visible anxiety. I found myself needing to step in more and more to handle things for her, just to keep our lives running smoothly. I kept my hands folded. I watched the judge. Judge Wright was listening, his chin resting on his steepled fingers. "Can you give the court a specific example?" Greer prompted. "Of course." Marcus leaned forward slightly, as if confiding in the judge. "Last year, our water heater failed. The plumber gave us 2 estimates for replacement. Evelyn became paralyzed. She couldn't decide between the 2 models. She spent days worrying over the specifications, when the truth was either one would have been fine. I finally had to make the choice myself. She was relieved. This pattern repeated itself with car repairs, insurance renewals, even ordering groceries online. Her anxiety made decision-making impossible. Each example was a tiny bullet, carefully aimed. They were distortions of reality, moments where I had asked for his opinion, where he had insisted on taking over, where my consultation had been recast as incapacity. "And financially?" Greer led. "That was my greatest concern." Marcus said, his voice dipping with faux gravity. "I managed all our investments, taxes, everything. I tried a few times to involve Evelyn, to show her the statements. She would become agitated. She'd say it was too much, that she trusted me. Over time, I accepted that protecting her meant shielding her from that stress. I never wanted her to feel burdened." It was a masterful rewrite. My quiet protest against his financial gatekeeping became a fear of numbers. My eroded trust became a childlike dependency. Greer then entered into evidence a series of emails I had sent to Marcus over the years. He had cherry-picked them. One read, "Marcus, I'm feeling very tired today. Can you handle the call with the accountant?" Another, "The investment statements came. They're on your desk." Out of context, they painted a picture of a woman deferring everything. "Do these reflect the dynamic you've described?" Greer asked. "They do," Marcus said, his face a mask of pained confirmation. "They show her reliance on me, her need for me to carry the load." Angela made a note on her pad but did not object. This was the performance we had to let play out. Finally, Greer approached the core of his narrative. "Mr. Richardson, why are you seeking the terms outlined in your petition? The house, the assets, spousal support?" Marcus turned his body fully toward Judge Wright. He made direct eye contact. "Your Honor, it is not what I want. It is what I believe is necessary. Evelyn cannot manage a house. The maintenance, the decisions, it would be a source of constant panic for her. The assets need careful, experienced management to ensure they provide for her in the long term. If she were to gain control, I fear she would be taken advantage of or make decisions out of fear that would deplete everything. The spousal support is to offset the professional cost this caretaker role has imposed on my career. I am not trying to harm her. I am trying one last time to protect her. I want the court to give me the tools to do that since I will no longer be in the home to manage day to day." His voice cracked on the last sentence, a perfect, calculated break. He looked down, composing himself. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. It was the full performance, the weary, self-sacrificing patriarch, the man burdened by love and duty. He had taken the lies from the petition and breathed life into them, giving them a face of sincere concern. Greer nodded solemnly. "No further questions, Your Honor." Judge Wright looked at Angela. "Cross-examination, Ms. Sharp." Angela stood. She smoothed her jacket. She did not approach the witness stand immediately. She looked at Marcus for a long moment, then at the judge. "Yes, Your Honor. I have a few questions for Mr. Richardson." She picked up a single sheet of paper from our table and walked slowly toward the podium. The atmosphere, which had grown heavy with Marcus's performance, shifted. It became alert, waiting. The performance was over. Now came the examination. Angela positioned herself at the podium. She did not look at the paper in her hand. She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Richardson, you've testified that my client, Evelyn, suffers from severe anxiety that impairs her decision-making. Is that correct?" Marcus straightened his tie slightly. He was on guard but confident. "That has been my experience, yes. And you've stated that this condition necessitated you taking complete control of all financial matters?" "For her own protection, yes." "And you believe she is incapable of managing the marital home?" "I do. The responsibility would be detrimental to her well-being." Angela nodded, as if simply confirming facts. "And the terms you are asking for, the house, the assets, spousal support, these are, in your view, the minimum required to execute this protection?" Marcus's eyes flicked to Greer for a millisecond, then back to Angela. "They are what I believe is necessary, based on 20 years of managing our lives." "So this isn't about punishment or retribution or personal gain?" Angela's tone was almost conversational. "Of course not." Marcus's voice took on a hint of indignation. "This is a difficult situation for everyone. I'm trying to do what's right." And doing what's right, in this case, requires a swift resolution, correct? To minimize the stress on Evelyn. That was certainly my hope. Dragging this out would only make things worse for her. Angela glanced down at her single sheet of paper. You mentioned earlier the liquidity event from your Meridian merger. That is proceeding? Greer stood up. Objection, relevance. Judge Wright looked at Angela. Ms. Sharp? It goes to motive and timeline, Your Honor. The petitioner referenced it in his own direct testimony regarding the need for efficiency. Overruled. Answer the question, Mr. Richardson. Marcus cleared his throat. The merger is complete. The payout is administrative. And you wanted this divorce finalized before that payout reached accounts you control. Isn't that true? Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Greer snapped. Sustained. Rephrase, counselor. Angela didn't miss a beat. Mr. Richardson, is it fair to say you had a personal interest in resolving this matter quickly? I had an interest in resolving it for the sake of everyone's peace of mind, Marcus said, his jaw tight, including your own peace of mind regarding your financial affairs. I suppose so, yes. Clarity is preferable to uncertainty. Clarity, Angela repeated. She let the word hang for a moment. So, to be clear, your entire position is built on your assertion of Evelyn's incapacity, your history as sole manager, and your desire for a swift, clean resolution that allows you to continue managing the assets for her benefit? Marcus took a breath. He seemed to be weighing the question for traps. He found none. It was, after all, exactly what he had spent the last hour telling the judge. Yes, that is accurate. And if the court were to award her the house, or a significant portion of the assets, you would view that as a grave mistake, a danger to her? I would. It would be like handing a complex machine to someone with no training. The potential for harm is significant. I see. Angela made a small note on her paper. It was for show. So your testimony today, under oath, is that you have always acted and are acting now out of concern for your wife's welfare? It is. Marcus's voice was firm, final, and the characterization of her as fragile, overwhelmed, and incapable. That is your sincere, sworn belief? It is. Angela looked up from her paper. She met his eyes. And you stand by all the requests in your petition as the only reasonable outcome? I do. There was a pause. Angela stood perfectly still. The courtroom was silent. She had not attacked him. She had not questioned him about Marlowe Holdings. She had not brought up the forensic report. She had simply made him repeat his story, underline it, and swear to it again. She had let him cement himself into the persona of the concerned caretaker. She looked at the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. The quiet that followed was profound. Marcus seemed almost disappointed, as if he had braced for a storm and received only a drizzle. He stepped down from the witness stand, his posture relaxed now. He returned to his seat beside Greer, who gave him a slight, satisfied nod. The message between them was clear. We got through it. She had nothing. Judge Wright checked the clock. Miss Sharp, does the respondent wish to present evidence? We do, Your Honor. I call my client, Evelyn Richardson, to the stand. The sound of my name in the formal air of the courtroom was a jolt, even though I was expecting it. This was my cue. I stood. My legs were steady. I walked the short distance to the witness stand. The bailiff administered the oath. My voice was clear when I said, I do. I sat. The wooden chair was hard. The microphone was a small, dark globe in front of me. I looked at Angela. She gave me a barely perceptible nod. Her direct examination was brief and soft. She asked me about the length of our marriage. She asked me about my role in maintaining our home. She asked me if I had ever been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder that impaired my functioning. No, I have not, I said. She asked me if I wanted to stay in my home. Yes, I do. She asked me if I believed I could manage my own financial affairs. Yes, I do. It was simple, factual. It stood in stark contrast to the elaborate tragedy Marcus had constructed. I was not arguing with him. I was merely stating a different reality. Then Angela paused. She turned slightly to address the judge. Your Honor, the respondent's own words have painted a very specific picture of my client and his motivations. I believe the best evidence of his true attitude, however, comes from the petitioner himself. She turned back to me. Mrs. Richardson, I hand you what has been marked as Respondent's Exhibit 1. Can you identify it? She walked forward and placed the small black digital recorder in my hand. It felt familiar. Cold. I held it up. This is a digital voice recorder, I said. And where did you obtain it? I purchased it. And did you, on the afternoon of September 12th, use this recorder in your home? I did. What were you recording? I looked directly at Judge Wright. I was recording a conversation between my husband, Marcus, and his lawyer, David Greer, which was taking place in the adjacent study. A rustle went through the courtroom. Greer was on his feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. This is a blatantly illegal recording made in secret. The recorder was in my own home, in a common area, I said, my voice still calm, cutting through his objection. I was present in the next room. I did not enter a private space. Judge Wright held up a hand. He was looking at me intently. I will hear it. The objection is noted. Proceed, Ms. Sharp. Angela's gaze was fixed on me. Mrs. Richardson, is there a specific segment of that recording that you believe is relevant to the petitioner's state of mind? There is. Please, for the court, locate that segment and prepare to play it. My thumb found the power button. I pressed it. The small screen lit up. I found the file. I looked across the room. Marcus was staring at me, his face a mask of confusion that was slowly hardening into dawning horror. He had not seen this coming. He had dismissed the recorder as a non-threat, if he'd thought of it at all. My finger hovered over the play button. The silent siege was over. Now was the revelation. I pressed play. The sound quality was surprisingly clear. First the murmur of two male voices, the clink of a glass. Then David Greer's professional tone. The medical documentation we've compiled regarding her fragile state, the request for full control is strong. A soft thud echoed in the silent courtroom. Marcus's hand, I realized, hitting the table in front of him as he lunged halfway to his feet. Greer grabbed his arm, pulling him back down. Then Marcus's own voice, loud and unmistakable, filled the room. Not the somber, concerned tone from the witness stand, but his business deal voice. Brisk, impatient. Just draw it up. A beat of silence on the recording, then the laugh. That short, dismissive laugh I had heard through the sunroom door. It echoed now in the formal chamber, sounding uglier, more callous. And then his final sentence, delivered with casual, conversational certainty. She won't last another month anyway. I pressed stop. The click was audible in the absolute quiet. I placed the recorder carefully on the ledge of the witness stand. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The words hung in the air, their meaning settling over the room like fine, toxic dust. I looked at Marcus. The color had drained from his face, leaving a waxy gray pallor. His mouth was slightly open. He was staring at the recorder as if it were a venomous snake. The carefully constructed mask of the burdened caregiver was gone, shattered. What remained was raw shock, and beneath it, a dawning, sickening comprehension. Greer was the first to make a sound. He cleared his throat, a harsh, scraping noise. Your Honor, I must object in the strongest possible terms. This is a gross violation of privacy, an illegally obtained— Be silent, Mr. Greer. Judge Wright's voice was low, but it cut through the room like a blade. He was not looking at the lawyer, he was looking at Marcus. His expression was no longer neutral. It was a storm of contempt held in check by sheer protocol. He slowly removed his glasses and set them on the bench before him. He turned his gaze to me. Mrs. Richardson, You recorded this conversation in your marital home? Yes, Your Honor. I was in the sunroom. They were in the connected study. The door was open. And the date was September 12th? It was. He nodded once. He looked back at Marcus. Mr. Richardson, is that your voice on this recording? Marcus seemed to physically shrink. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His eyes darted to Greer, who gave a minute, helpless shake of his head. There was no denying it. It is, Marcus finally whispered. Then, louder, a desperate lunge for context. Your Honor, that was a private moment of frustration. It doesn't reflect my true feelings. I was under stress. You were in consultation with your attorney, Judge Wright interrupted, his tone icy. You were formulating legal strategy. That is not a private moment of frustration. That is the heart of your position. He picked up his glasses but did not put them on. He tapped them against the palm of his hand. For the past hour, this court has listened to you testify under oath that your every action is motivated by concern for your wife's welfare, that you seek control of her assets and her home for her own protection, that she is fragile, incapable, a burden you must shoulder. He paused, letting the weight of his own words crush the air from the room. And now we hear your private assessment, offered to your counsel as rationale for a swift resolution. She won't last another month anyway. He repeated the phrase slowly, letting each word land. That is not the language of protection, Mr. Richardson. That is the language of disposal. Greer tried again. Your Honor, the admissibility. It is admitted, Judge Wright stated, his voice final. The context speaks for itself. It goes directly to the issue of good faith, which is central to this proceeding. He looked at Angela. Ms. Sharp, you may continue your examination. Angela, who had been standing perfectly still, approached me again. Her face was a mask of professional composure, but I saw a fierce light in her eyes. Mrs. Richardson, after hearing that conversation, what did you do? I hired Attorney Sharp, I said. Why? Because I understood that my husband was not seeking to protect me. He was seeking to erase me. I decided to last. A faint, almost imperceptible ripple went through the gallery behind me. No further questions, Your Honor, Angela said. Judge Wright looked at Greer. Do you wish to recross, Mr. Greer? Greer stood. He looked defeated. He knew no questions could undo what the judge had just heard. No, Your Honor. The witness is excused. I stepped down from the stand. My legs carried me back to our table. As I passed the petitioner's table, I did not look at Marcus. I felt the heat of his stare, a mixture of fury and terror. I took my seat beside Angela. She did not look at me, but her hand under the table gave my forearm a brief, hard squeeze. Judge Wright addressed the room. We will take a 15-minute recess. Counsel, see me in chambers. He banged his gavel and stood. The spell broke. A low buzz of conversation erupted in the gallery. The bailiff called for order. Marcus and Greer huddled together, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. Marcus's hands were trembling. Angela gathered her papers. Stay here, she murmured to me. Don't speak to anyone. She followed the judge and Greer through the side door. I sat alone at the table. I looked at the recorder, now a dead piece of plastic on the evidence ledge. The words it had contained were now living in the room, in the mind of the judge, in the ruined case of Marcus Richardson. The silent siege was over. The wall had fallen, and on the other side was the wreckage of his arrogance. I folded my hands on the table and waited. The victory was not yet official, but it was complete. He had been heard in his own voice by the one person who mattered. The performance was finished. All that remained was the verdict. The recess lasted 20 minutes. I remained at the table, my hands folded. The murmurs in the gallery rose and fell like distant waves. When the side door opened and Angela emerged, her face gave nothing away. She walked back to our table, sat and leaned close. "The judge is not happy," she said, her voice a low monotone meant only for me. He wanted to confirm the chain of custody on the recording and review the forensic report. Greer tried to argue for mitigation. It didn't land. Be ready. A moment later, the bailiff called the room to order. Judge Wright re-entered, his face set in grim lines. He took his seat. The silence he brought with him was heavier than before. "Be seated," he said. He placed his glasses on his nose and opened a file. He did not look at Marcus or Greer. "This has been an illuminating case," he began, his voice measured but carrying an edge. "We began with a petition full of extreme demands, justified by claims of spousal fragility and necessity. We heard testimony from the petitioner portraying himself as a long-suffering protector. We then reviewed forensic accounting that shows a deliberate pattern of concealing marital assets. And finally, we heard the petitioner's own unguarded assessment of his spouse's resilience, or lack thereof." He paused, letting his gaze settle on Marcus, who stared fixedly at the table in front of him. "The law expects spouses to deal with one another in good faith, especially during the difficult process of dissolution. Good faith is not a technicality. It is the foundation. What I have seen and heard from the petitioner is a profound absence of good faith. It is instead a campaign of condescension, concealment, and callousness." My breath felt very still in my chest. I watched the judge's hands, weathered and steady, as they rested on the file. The recording admitted into evidence is dispositive of the petitioner's true attitude. The statement, "she won't last another month anyway," is not a mere expression of frustration. It is a revealing window into a mindset that views the respondent not as a person, but as an impediment to be efficiently removed. It directly contradicts the narrative of protective concern presented from the witness stand. It reveals that narrative to be what it is, a legal fiction. He turned a page. "Given this, the court finds the petitioner's testimony regarding the respondent's incapacity to be entirely unreliable. The respondent is a competent adult, capable of managing her own affairs. The petitioner's claims to the contrary are rejected." He looked up, addressing both tables. "Now, to the substance. Regarding the marital residence, the petition for sole title and possession is denied. The respondent, Evelyn Richardson, is awarded sole title to the property located at the marital address. The quitclaim deed shall be executed within 30 days. A solid, quiet thump of finality. The house was mine. Regarding marital assets, the court finds the petitioner engaged in intentional dissipation and concealment of assets through the entity Marlowe Holdings, LLC. As a penalty for this bad faith conduct and to achieve an equitable distribution, the court awards 65% of the total marital estate to the respondent, Evelyn Richardson. This includes the full value of the Marlowe Holdings account, inclusive of the recent merger proceeds. The petitioner shall bear all tax liabilities associated with the liquidation and transfer of those funds." He continued, listing investment accounts, retirement funds. The numbers were a blur. The percentage was what mattered. It was more than fair. It was punitive, and justly so. The request for spousal support from respondent to petitioner is denied. The petitioner's request for attorney's fees is denied. The petitioner shall pay a portion of the respondent's reasonable attorney's fees to be determined by submitted affidavit. He closed the file. He removed his glasses and looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Richardson, you came into this court seeking to take everything from your wife based on a story of her weakness. You leave having lost a great deal because the court saw your character. I suggest you reflect on the cost of that revelation. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell. The sound was sharp, clean. For a moment there was no movement. Then the gallery erupted in a buzz of shocked conversation. Greer was immediately whispering fiercely to Marcus, whose head was bowed, his shoulders slumped as if under a physical weight. He looked shattered, Angela placed a hand on my arm. "Don't look at him. Look at me. We are going to stand, gather our things, and walk out. Slowly. With dignity." I stood. My legs were steady. I placed the notepad and pen into my purse. I did not glance to my right. I followed Angela as she led the way out of the courtroom, past the curious stares of the onlookers, into the marble hallway. We did not speak until we were in the elevator, descending. The doors closed on the muffled noise from above. Angela let out a long, slow breath. Then she smiled. It was a real smile, fierce and satisfied. 65%, the house, fees. That, Eve, is what we call a total rout. The recording, I began, was the key that unlocked the judge's disbelief, she finished. But it was your discipline that built the case. You were perfect. You gave him nothing but rope, and he used every inch of it. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. "We'll have the formal order in a few days. I'll handle the transfers. You go home. To your home." We walked out of the courthouse. The rain had stopped. A pale, clear autumn sun had broken through the clouds, washing the gray stone steps in weak gold light. I stopped on the top step, feeling the cool air on my face. Angela touched my shoulder. "You're free of him, in every way that matters." I nodded. I could not yet find words for what I felt. It was not euphoria. It was a deep, settling quiet, a silence of my own choosing, not imposed. "I'll be in touch," she said. She turned and walked down the steps toward the parking garage, her stride confident. I stood there for a minute, alone. I looked at the sky. I thought of the garden, waiting. The roses would need deadheading. The beds would need mulching before the first frost. There was work to do. I walked down the steps to my car. I unlocked it and got inside. I sat for a moment, the weight of the morning still settling around me. Then I started the engine and pulled into the traffic. I drove back to the house, my house. I parked in the driveway. I walked up the path, past the hydrangeas, their blue faded now to a dusty purple. I unlocked the front door. The silence inside was different. It was no longer the silence of waiting or of siege. It was a spacious, empty silence. It was full of potential. It was mine. I went to the sunroom. I stood at the window, looking at my garden. The judge's words echoed, but softly now, their power spent. "She won't last another month anyway." He was wrong. I had lasted. I had outlasted his narrative, his plans, his contempt. I had lasted, and in the lasting, I had reclaimed everything. The sun moved behind a cloud, then emerged again, stronger. I turned from the window. There were boxes to pack, his things. There were calls to make, to change the locks, to update the deed. There was a life to begin. I walked into the kitchen to put the kettle on. The simple, familiar act felt like a promise. The siege was over. The war was won. The quiet that followed was not an ending, but a foundation. And on it, I would build something new.